we start this episode, I can't begin without talking about the protests that have dominated headlines following the tragic death of George Floyd, a black man from Minneapolis. On the 25th of May, George was stopped by police after it was suspected that he had purchased cigarettes with counterfeit money. Videos would later show police holding George Floyd face down on the ground with one officer, Derek Chauvin, kneeling on the neck of Mr. Floyd for almost 9 minutes, during which time Floyd lost consciousness and would later be pronounced dead. As it currently stands, Derek Chauvin has been charged with second-degree murder, and the other 3 officers, Thomas Lane, J. Alexander Kung, and Tao Teo, face charges of aiding and abetting. The video of George Floyd's murder is graphic, with George telling the 4 officers that he could not breathe, and even calling out for his mother, who had died a few years prior. Sadly, George's story is not new, as systematic racism has consistently demonstrated that the lives of black people are deemed less important than those of their white counterparts. I will be linking in the show notes important petitions, causes, and websites that I urge you to look at in order to support the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, I had planned to cover the case of Kenneka Jenkins in this episode before the protests even began. With the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests, one of the many petitions I've seen is the call for this case, as well as that of Kendrick Johnson, to be reopened, saying that there were issues in the investigations that were not explored thoroughly by police. We'll be talking about some of these issues today, and if you'd like to support the petitions asking for these cases to be reopened, I will also link those in the show notes. On the 8th of September 2017, 19-year-old Kenneka Jenkins drove 3 friends to the Crowne Plaza Hotel in Rosemont, Illinois. On the 8th of September, there was going to be a party in room 926, which approximately 30 people would attend. At around 3 a.m., Kenneka and some friends were seen on CCTV walking down the hotel's corridors preparing to leave. It would later be said that Kenneka was missing some personal possessions. Her friends would therefore leave her to go back to the hotel room to get her stuff. CCTV would then show Kenneka stumbling around the hotel on her own. After an hour, her friends called Kenneka's mother, Teresa Martin, saying that her daughter was missing. Her body would not be found until Sunday, September 10th, but it was the circumstances around her death which brought her case into the media spotlight. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Students' Verdict podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't already, please listen to our earlier episodes. And for those of you who are new, my name is Emily. Please follow us on Instagram at the Student Verdict blog and on Twitter at Student Verdict. Resources used in this episode will always be linked in the show notes. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review, and if you don't, then never mind. With all that said, let's get started on today's episode. According to one news report, at around 4 a.m., an hour since Kenneka's friends had last seen her, they phoned Kenneka's mother, Teresa Martin, to ask if she had returned home because they couldn't find her at the hotel. Ms. Martin, however, recalled in an interview with the morning show 107.5 WGCI that it was closer to 2 hours since her daughter's disappearance before she was contacted. The friends returned Ms. Martin's car to her and Kenneka's phone. Ms. Martin later said in an interview that she was concerned because Kenneka was the driver that night, so why did her friends have her car keys and her phone? According to Ms. Martin, Kenneka's sister Lenore made her way to the Crowne Plaza Hotel with 2 friends to look for Kenneka. The family were critical of the hotel's response to their concerns about Kenneka, describing the hotel as uncooperative. At 7:15 a.m., Ms. Martin called Rosemont police from the hotel's car park. By now, she and other relatives and friends had been at the hotel for at least an hour and were desperate to find Kenneka. The dispatcher told her that she should go home, wait for a couple of hours to see if her daughter showed up. If Kenneka still didn't come home, then Ms. Martin should call the police again. Teresa Martin was not willing to give up, however. She was understandably worried that Kenneka had been drinking and didn't have her mobile phone with her. Lenore asked staff at the hotel's front desk if they could look at the camera footage to see if Kenneka could be traced. Hotel staff said unfortunately it was a police matter, and so they could not give her access to the CCTV footage. Lenore then phoned 911, hoping that the police would be able to investigate and retrieve the necessary camera footage. She was advised to go to the police station and make a missing persons report, which she did. Having completed the report, Lenore returned to the hotel to ask them, as she now had a missing persons report number, whether they could allow her to access the footage. They again refused, as she did not have the physical missing persons report with her. Ms. Martin was also critical of the actions of police, who she said only attended the hotel because Lenore had forgotten to sign the missing persons report. Lenore asked the officer to check the camera footage to see if Kenneka could be seen. Ms. Martin described the officer as being in the security office for 5 minutes before saying that he didn't see Kenneka entering or exiting the building, which would suggest that she was not on the hotel premises. At 8:29, more officers were dispatched to the hotel after the hotel called and complained that the Jenkins family were knocking on hotel guest doors looking for Kenneka. After arriving, police asked to view the hotel surveillance, which did indeed show Kenneka entering the hotel, but there was no footage to show her leaving. Police checked room 926 and nearby stairwells. They could not see any sign of suspicious activity. The hotel staff agreed to continue to review the CCTV. Before leaving the hotel, officers told the family to contact them with any new information. The police response would later be criticised for a lack of urgency. CCTV from between 3:25 and 3:32 a.m. would later show Kenneka stumbling through the hotel's corridors. She could be seen bumping into walls and struggling upstairs. In the footage, she's clearly impaired. In one piece of footage, Kenneka makes her way through an empty kitchen and disappears around a corner. This was the last footage of Kenneka alive. We'll be coming back to the CCTV shortly. At 12:23 a.m. on Sunday the 10th of September, the food and beverage manager at the hotel walked through an empty kitchen. To be clear, this was not the hotel's main kitchen. It was supposedly being leased out to a restaurant. The employee goes round the corner, as Kenneka did in the CCTV, which is where the kitchen's freezer is located. The employee moves out of the camera's view before reappearing to summon a police officer. Kenneka Jenkins' body was found in that freezer. She was sadly declared dead at 12:48 a.m. on Sunday the 10th of September 2017. Kenneka was lying on her side, was missing a grey trainer which was on the other side of the freezer. Her top was pulled up, exposing her stomach and breasts. Her left hand was down by her stomach and her right hand was curled up on her chest. It sort of looked tangled in her long dark hair which was covering her face. Once the hair had been moved from her face, you could see she was wearing false eyelashes. There didn't seem to be any obvious injuries, but I will be returning to this later. She was wearing a watch on her left wrist and had her belly button pierced. The buttons to her trousers were done up, but her trousers seemed to be sat quite low, and her pockets looked as though they had been turned out. As you looked into the freezer, her head was resting against the right-hand side. She was laying on the floor with her legs extended to the left. There was what looked like blood on Kenneka's trainer and on the floor of the freezer, likely from an injury found on her foot. In the freezer, a hair scrunchie was found by Kenneka's body, as was a clear lip gloss. A second pink lip gloss was found near the doorway of the freezer. The temperature of the freezer was approximately 1 degree Celsius, and that was after the door had been open for 2 hours. The freezer was described as being a walk-in freezer within a walk-in cooler, and was part of an unused kitchen. At 1:15 a.m., police officers brought Teresa Martin, Kenneka's mother, into an empty conference room to inform her that her daughter had been found deceased. At 5:07 a.m., Teresa Martin and Lenore were escorted by officials into the kitchen to identify the body. By this time, Kenneka's body had been moved onto a stretcher and was covered by a blanket. Teresa and Lenore were also allowed to view the freezer, where Kenneka was found. It was reported by 5 Chicago that on the 11th of September, the hotel released a statement saying, quote, We are saddened by this news, and our thoughts are with the young woman and her family during this difficult time. The hotel staff will continue to cooperate fully with local authorities. The hotel also offered to pay for Kenneka's funeral expenses, but Theresa Martin declined the offer as they had not offered their condolences to her. By this time, the police investigation into Kenneka's death was underway. They had reportedly declined the FBI's offer of assistance. In an article from the 16th of September 2017, a total of 25 people had been interviewed by police, 16 of whom had been inside the hotel room during the party. Police believed that at least 31 people had been in the hotel room that night, and they were trying to track down the remaining individuals. At the conclusion of the investigation, police would generate 127 police reports, and they would conduct 44 interviews, 36 of which took place with people who were present in room 926. Kenneka's autopsy took place at 10 a.m. on the 10th of September 2017. When she was examined, Kenneka was wearing a white bra top, blue denim jacket, blue jeans, and purple underwear. She was wearing one grey shoe on her left foot. She weighed 159 pounds and was 66 inches in length. Rigor mortis was well developed and symmetrical in the upper and lower extremities, the neck, and the jaw. Lividity was present except in areas exposed to pressure. The autopsy stated that there was no external evidence of injury to her neck. There was also no external signs of injuries to her genitalia. In the report it was written, quote, "The anus and perineum are atraumatic and unremarkable. The back and buttocks have no traumatic abnormalities," end quote. The report did set out a few injuries Kenneka had. These included a red-purple abrasion on her right ankle and an ill-defined purple contusion on her right leg. All body organs were present in the normal anatomic positions. Remember this, as we'll be returning to this later. The pathological findings included Wisniewski's lesions in the stomach. These types of lesions are considered an important finding for the diagnosis of hypothermia-related deaths. The examiner found evidence of alcohol intoxication. Kenneka's blood level was 0.112. There were also traces of topiramate. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. The levels were recorded as 300 nanograms per milliliter. Topiramate is a drug used to treat epilepsy and migraines. Kenneka was not prescribed this medication, so it's unclear how this got into her system. Like alcohol, topiramate can cause side effects such as dizziness, impaired memory, poor coordination, confusion, and impaired judgment. Central nervous system depression or impairment combined with cold exposure can hasten the onset of hypothermia. The opinion of the medical examiner was that Kenneka Jenkins died of hypothermia due to cold exposure in a walk-in freezer. The alcohol and the topiramate were deemed to be significant factors which contributed to her death. Kenneka had been found in the freezer approximately 21 hours after she was seen on camera entering the kitchen. The freezer she was found in was a walk-in dual-compartment cooler and freezer unit. The doors of both the cooler and the freezer had external handles that must be pulled to open. And both doors were equipped with a circular, functional, internal door opening mechanism, suggesting the door could have been opened from the inside. In conclusion, the report did not reveal any trauma that would have caused or contributed to her death. The manner of Kenneka's death was therefore concluded as an accident. Kenneka was laid to rest in September 2017 following a 2.5-hour service where mourners expressed their grief and recalled their fondest memories. In a poem, her nieces said, quote, "Every time I feel upset, she makes me feel like a princess. Nika was so funny, she would make me cry." Her loved ones wore shirts that read, "Justice for Kenneka." On October 20th, 2017, a month and 10 days after Kenneka's body had been found, police confirmed that Kenneka Jenkins' case was closed.